We don't rock, we talk. Today's News Talk, TNT Radio.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Patrick Henningsen Show here on TNT, Today's News Talk. We are live and direct for the next 2 hours. Thank you for joining us. Big thank you to everyone in the TNT chat community. Great to see you guys in there as well, keeping it alive, keeping it real. That's where you want to be during the program. You can access that via the mobile app. Just go to the chat feature or just dial in tntradio.live on your URL. You'll see the red bubble lower right-hand corner. That is the chat room. Log in, stay logged in. That's where we want to be during all of the great programs on this channel. I want to switch gears now to U.S. politics. Well, we're going to talk about what's going on in the world, but through the lens of U.S. politics. I want to welcome onto the stage a great independent activist. I would call him also a citizen journalist. He's also running for U.S. Congress right now in the state of New York. Jose Vega joining us on the live link right now. Jose, how are you?
I'm good. I'm out here tired, sun-kissed, and happy to be on the program with you.
Thanks for joining us. I know you've been out canvassing. We've been following your social media feeds as well, canvassing for your campaign. I want to hear how this is going as well. I also want to know a little bit about who you're running against as well. And also for Diane Sare, who is also an independent candidate for U.S. Senate. You're both in the same state of New York. How is things going right now on your side of things, Jose?
Well, sure. On my side of things, first of all, I'm a candidate here in New York 15. This is a district that is composed entirely within the Bronx. New York 15 is kind of a famous district because it is the poorest congressional district in the entire country. And I'm not exaggerating. Statistically, objectively, by every measure, it is the poorest congressional district in the entire country. My opponent is Ritchie Torres. Now, Ritchie Torres has made a lot of headlines recently because he is in favor of banning TikTok. He is also on the committee to watch, he's one of the watchdogs on China. He supports the Ukraine war. He supports Taiwan independence and trying to wedge between China and Taiwan. And of course, as he likes to call himself, the champion of Israel. What we've been doing out in the field is we've been collecting petitions to make sure that my name and Diane Sare's name is on the ballot in November, right? New York State makes it very difficult for non-party affiliated people like myself and Diane to get on the ballot. Her and I are both independents, yet we have to do 3 times the work and 3 times the number of signatures to get on the ballot. So as for my campaign, we are at a comfortable place with our number of signatures that we are confident we will be on the ballot, and it'll just be me versus Mr. Torres in November. As for Diane, we're still going, and we're going to keep going all the way through Memorial Day weekend. We're going to exceed 45,000, and we're going to keep on going. So that's where we are in our races. And she's running against Kirsten Gillibrand, another military-industrial complex puppet, and somebody who likes to shill for Israel.
So where's Ritchie Torres on his politics on some of these really important issues here? Is he sort of in the Democrat, the new sort of neoliberal pro-war bloc that's kind of formed, kind of almost like a whip line on everything to do with war funding, everything to do with supporting Israel? The Democrats seem to have more of a tighter whip than the Republicans do. Where is your opponent on all these issues?
Well, he is on the Select Committee on Strategic Competition between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party. All right. He originally joined the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, and then he most notably left it about a month and a half ago. He just announced that he was leaving the Progressive Caucus. So he is not a progressive by any means necessary, and he has denounced his colleagues who call themselves progressives. Now, to some people who may have been following my work for years now, you know I'm no fan of these progressives, whether it's AOC or Bowman, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib. I'm infamous for going after them and standing up. At the same time, he happens to be unlikable and worse than them, and he is kind of proud of it. He is smug about it. And I mentioned this committee he's on because he is trying to start World War III between China and Russia. You know, he is in favor of funding Taiwan and giving Taiwan arms and weapons as a way to, you know, start World War III. But I mean, the worst. And the thing is, somebody did a compilation of how many times he mentions Israel over the Bronx. He mentions Israel 236% more times than he does the Bronx, his own district. And I'm proud to say, as somebody who's been out every day with a team of tons of volunteers, we talk to the people, the constituents. They don't like him either. You know, he's not good here domestically, and he's not good on foreign policy. Overall, everyone hates him. But he has $8 million behind him. A lot of it is a lot of it is security investments. A lot of it is the pro-Israeli lobby. I think over $2 million have come from different pro-Israel lobby sources, not just IPAC. A lot of it is Wall Street speculation. A lot of it is Wall Street bankers who give him lots of money. So I'm very much against opponent who is backed by the military-industrial complex and Israel, or as Ray McGovern likes to put it, the Mickey Matt system. That's the media intelligence complex. You know what? I'll remember the name, the acronym in just a second. But that's my opponent. That's who he is, and that's where he stands on policy.
Yeah, I think it's a military-industrial congressional complex or government complex. Mickey Matt, I think it was called. But
Yeah.
How do they do it? But how do they do it, Jose? You've got AOC, you've got Ritchie Torres. Their views are so distant from what the people in their constituencies believe in, what the values of the people that live in the constituencies they're meant to be representing. How do they do it? How do they get into power? How do they stay in power? Give us your sort of opinion on this strange equation.
Sure. Well, for one, I can speak for AOC, which is this. I mean, I'll give her this. As terrible as she is on foreign policy, and as much as she caves to the Democratic Party, especially when it comes to foreign policy, you talk to the people on the ground who are her constituents. She is very good when it comes to dealing with constituent problems. If it's an individual thing, she will help. And I've even pointed people to her office who need some kind of assistance, because when it comes to helping people in her community, she is genuine on that. And I can attest to that. And that's something I will go on the record. As opposed to Ritchie Torres, he is not. Okay, you can't even walk into his office anymore without scheduling an appointment 3 weeks ahead. And if you're known to be somebody who disagrees with his policies, they won't let you in. Now, how does Ritchie Torres stay in office? $1.5 million from IPAC every election cycle. He has an $8 million war chest. How does AOC stay in office? By being, you know, a good politician and not giving in anytime she has a disagreement with the party. For example, look at what's happening right now with Ukraine, right? She has very vocally said, if you separate Ukraine and Taiwan, I will vote for both of those bills to give them money, but I won't vote to give Israel money. See, she thinks as if you can like separate these things, as if there's something, you know, different between them, but it's all part of this military, industrial, congressional, intelligence, media, academia, think tank complex. That's the Mickey Matt. You know, it's all the same thing. You can't separate it. But the fact that she thinks she can play these games, whereas, oh yeah, Ukraine is just, you know, Ukraine, that's Putin. Putin's a bad guy, therefore we can give Ukraine all the money they need, shows a complete lack of understanding, you know, of what it takes to be a politician. You know, my litmus test for politicians is this. Look, the Ukraine-Russia war is a litmus test to see if you're even qualified to be in office. If you don't understand the complexity of that, you have no right being anywhere near the office. The Israel-Gaza question is a litmus test on your humanity. Okay, where you stand on that shows a lot about your character as a human being, right? And I think Ritchie Torres has failed that litmus test, whereas AOC has some humanity in her because she is one of the only congressional voices standing up for Israel, albeit it is standing up for Palestine, albeit it is one of the most milquetoast oppositions, and she endorses Genocide Joe. So, I mean, is she really standing up for Palestine other than paying lip service? I don't think so. So,
she might be thinking about her career, her long-term career in the party. Maybe she has designs on being the next Speaker of the House one day, perhaps the next Nancy Pelosi, or maybe it's a talk show career. I'm not sure. But the other thing that they do, Jose, which is interesting, when they frame the debate on this, is they like to frame it very narrowly. So when they talk about Israel and Gaza, they don't talk about or want to acknowledge anything before October 7th. And when they talk about Ukraine and Russia, they don't want to talk about anything before February 25th, 2022. It's as if these things happen in a kind of a vacuum. We can't really have a contextual debate. Of course, I know that you and Diane Sayre and the Schiller Institute, some of these great organizations, are very good at mapping out the historical timeline that makes events happen in the world, cause and effect. But this seems to be almost like a chronic disease in Washington now. People cannot have a grown-up discussion and honestly say how we got here. And I find this to be like an intellectual logjam on all these issues whenever you want to have a real debate on this. Is this something that you can bring to the table if you're afforded that platform?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I like to think in some sense, and when I was, I guess must have been like 4 years ago. So when I was 21, I was making YouTube videos trying to talk about the history of the Ukraine situation and the Maidan coup. This was about a year. This was when Joe Biden was just first announced as the winner of the election between him and Donald Trump. And I was, in my room making videos talking about why I thought Joe Biden was a neo-Nazi because he was seen shaking hands with Oleg Tianabak, right? And lo and behold, the next year, the war would break out. You mentioned the Schiller Institute. Yeah, I mean, Harley Schlanger wrote this great article detailing in 2019, detailing the events of the Maidan coup and how it was going to lead to an eventual confrontation or conflict or a regional war or even World War III if it wasn't, kept in check. So I draw a lot of my information from that, and from the daily alerts that they put out from the Executive Intelligence Review. So truly, it is a good resource. But I think one of the things we're doing with the campaign is we're not waiting to actually get into the office. I'll be doing a lot of things this summer. One of them is called Bronx Freedom Summer, and we want to be able to teach history as well as, astronomy and geometry, not just for the youth as well, but for it to be a resource for the community, where people can come in and understand what they might think is a complex geopolitical situation is actually not so complex at all. It's actually something that if you just took the time to sit down and understand it, we can actually talk about how we got to where we got, whether it's Victoria Nuland and the Maidan coup, or if we want to go all the way back to the first Nakba. I mean, we can talk about it and we can actually figure out exactly where this conflict started, but also, the path for peace as well. I think there is a way out of these things. There is a way forward. There is a role that the United States can play in developing these nations, like Palestine, for example. I think we need a sovereign Palestine, but a lot of it has been reduced to rubble. So the world has to take charge of rebuilding Palestine and saying, no, Palestine is going to look like Beijing in the next 5 to 10 years. How do we make it look like that? How do we make it look like Shanghai in the next 5 to 10 years? How do we rapidly develop this country to truly be sovereign? And I think that is something that the world and the United States can play a role in. I mean, that's why I'm running for office. I do believe the United States can be redeemed if the people decide to redeem it, because you're not going to find the hope in the government, at least not the people in there right now, unless people decide to take back their government.
No, that's true. That's true. It's going to be a combination, I think, of getting people in office that care about the issues and care about the history and the facts enough to make informed decisions and policy prescriptions on these issues, and that their constituents are also educated on it. It's not enough just to have an elite class of educated politicians. We need to get the public up to speed on these issues as well. So I think those are great initiatives that you're proposing there, Jose, as well. And just, look, how are things shaping up right now? A lot of people have, come down hard on Gen Zers over the years as being kind of shallow and superficial on some of these kind of trendy issues that seem to dominate protests in past years. But now you see an actual anti-war movement manifesting on campuses across the United States. What do you think about this explosion in the pro-Palestinian student protests? I know you probably have up close experience with this in New York. Just give us your feelings, your assessment, where this has come from. Where do you think it's heading?
Yeah, well, okay, it's a good question, actually, because yes, I do. I did a tour of some of these campuses. I wasn't able to go into Columbia, but I did go to CCNY. I went to Rutgers, and I went to a few other schools. I spoke with organizers. I spoke with just people there. Generally, and the first thing I want to say is I did not see any anti-Semitism. That is just a myth, and I would like to dispel that myth. And the reason that the Biden administration and the media has to come out and say there's a lot of anti-Semitism is because these movements are actually potent, and they have to change the subject as to what these protests are about. You see, I do have to give credit to Gen Z because, they've utilized social media platforms like TikTok as a way to spread the truth about what's actually going on in Palestine and what's going on with Israel being its oppressor. I think, when I look at these protests, there's a kind of question of like, well, where do we go now and what's next? And personally, there are some schools that are going to continue to have an encampment even beyond the commencements, even beyond the graduations. And I think that's great. There needs to be an escalation of this. Now, I think that the students, and I've talked about this with some of the students, is they need to have the ability to actually dissect their universities, because a lot of them are calling for divestment. A lot of them are calling for their university to boycott certain things. But if you look at the board of trustees of these places like Columbia, or you look at the president herself of Columbia was I think she was the vice president of the World Bank at one point. And she was also part of so many different other boards that are deeply entrenched and tied with this Mickey Mouse system that Ray McGovern has so aptly put. And not only her, but also you look at on the board of trustees, this guy Johnson, who served as the Obama administration as counsel to the Defense Department and then the Secretary of Homeland Security. So these are the kinds of people that are running the universities, especially some of these big Ivy Leagues, right? So you have the presidents, you have the board of trustees. All of these people are so deeply entrenched and tied with the military-industrial complex that the students have to be able to call that out and say, no, actually, the school I go to and the people who run it are the Mickey Mouse system, are the military-industrial complex. And I think what we're seeing now, if they decide, is a resurgence of journalism. I think those students have the ability, starting with where they go to school, to really understand their school and understand the Mickey Mouse system and be able to circulate this, whether it's through printed paper, because it looks like they're going to try and censor all of social media. I mean, TikTok was just a pretext to try and shut down and monitor and surveil all social media. As Ritchie Torres, who wants to introduce this bill called the Columbia Act to increase surveillance in all of the schools, which, trust me, I was very unpopular. And I got a lot of requests and contacts from people in these schools who were saying, look, I was looking for his opponent and your name came up. So what are we doing to get this guy out? That's exactly what I like to hear, not just because I'm running against him, but because it shows that the kids want to do something. They want to get up and they want to do something. They want to get this guy out. And so, that would be my call. It's like, keep the encampments going, accelerate the pressure, but also actually begin to dissect your university, your board of trustees, because it's going to be ugly what you find, and it should be exposed.
Sort of like the demilitarization of academia, because what you're describing there, Jose, is that the tentacles of this Mickey Mouse system have managed to get into and around these institutions to the point where they're almost going to determine at the end of the day who's on the board of trustees, who's in all the top administrative positions, chancellor, president, etc., and then everything's going to be geared towards these types of industries. So I find that to be a problem that's not only in the United States. We've heard similar complaints from the UK and European universities as well. So this is a global trend, at least in the G7 countries. Very important issue that you're highlighting there, Jose. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I'm pretty shocked that they would have such a crazy bill called and they'll name it the Columbia Bill. And it's a pro-surveillance bill. I mean, this is like the Red Scare. It's like McCarthyism, basically.
Oh, absolutely it is. I mean, and that's kind of like the parallels that people have been drawing between today and the 50s and 60s, right? It also exposes something. It dispels this notion, things would be worse under Trump because Trump would bring in fascism. And I get this on the street sometimes too. People ask me, as a candidate, do you support Biden or Trump? And I say they're both bad, right? And then their response is, no, but things would be worse under Trump. No, you have protests being cracked down right now. You're afraid of the suppression of free speech? What's happening on the universities right now? Look at the bills they're trying to institute. They're banning TikTok, and they're saying it's because China is surveilling on your kids, as if the United States does not openly surveil everything you do. Everything that comes between, this and a cell tower is like, this being your cell phone and a cell tower is like completely monitored and surveilled. They have every text message you send, every phone call, every voicemail you've left, every time you've broken up over the phone, they have that, right? China does not care about that, but for some reason your US government does. I mean, people are living in a fantasy and it's being dispelled because of the protests. That's what these protests have done. It's allowed the American people to be awoken to the fact that they are already living in something like a Nazi Germany in the 1933. You are already in fascism. This is a totalitarian government. Let's not pretend like things would be worse under Trump. Maybe it would be 1 degree hotter. If we're already in hell, okay, and Trump would just be turning up the furnace up by 1 degree. It's the same thing, folks. It's time for people to stop putting their hope in hoping somebody's going to run. Not that people shouldn't support me, but it's like, what are you prepared to do for your country? Do you want to take your country back? Do you want to take your government back? And this is my plea to you. You have to be the voice of reason, be the voice of truth in your part of the world, no matter where you are. Speak the truth unafraid. Stand up and intervene. Do something so that you can say, I want my country back and I want my government back from the fascism that has overtaken it.
It's extraordinary. The non-existent or theoretical threat that the Chinese CCP is stealing the data of your American teenage children. You're weighing that against either handing over TikTok to a U.S. Consortium or U.S.-Israeli consortium that will just outright censor whole blocks of speech, or shut the platform down altogether. I mean, that's the choice they're offering the American people, and it's quite extraordinary. It was really something. Look, if you have time, Jose, if you're able to stay with us after the break, I'd like to talk about the United States and the relationship with Israel and how this is shaping up, not just foreign policy, but also affecting the 2024 presidential election. If you're able to, we'd love to get your comments on that. Listen, folks, we're getting into U.S. politics here. Yes, it is an election year. I know it doesn't feel like an election year. It's a weird election, but it is. Jose, there's been a whole spate of legislation that's almost like genuflecting to the Israeli lobby. The anti-Semitism bill, as it was called. I mean, but this latest one really does take the biscuit here. The House attempted to pass a bill that would defund the Department of Defense, the State Department, the National Security Council, unless President Biden agrees to facilitate the total conditions-free flow of U.S. arms to the state of Israel. I mean, even by crazy standards of recent, this really tops it all. Did you get a chance to see this? What are your thoughts?
I did see that. And I mean, part of me is like, I hope Biden never caves in. I hope all of this stuff continues to stay defunded. But I mean, of course, Biden isn't crazy enough to actually, go against that bill and have the NSC defunded. I mean, it's obviously meant to just kind of like force his hand to give the arms and weapons that they're withholding to Israel. I don't know. Because I remember when Biden announced that he was going to withhold some weapons, saying, oh, well, some of this might be used in Rafah in a way in which we don't like. But then I think it was an Israeli spokesperson who said, well, we already have everything we need to get the Rafah operation done. So it was clearly that this is theatrics, actually, of what's going on, because Biden knows that the Israelis have everything they need to wipe out Rafah already. So he can afford some political points by saying, see, folks, I'm fair. I don't want Rafah invaded either. That's why I'm going to withhold all the weapons, even though they already have enough, right? And I think people kind of see right through that as well. I genuinely don't believe there's anybody in the country now, I don't know. I mean, I do meet a lot of people who really just are like so inundated with mainstream news. I'd like to believe, and from people that I talk to here in the Bronx, I'll say this, my constituency in the Bronx is one of the smartest in the entire country, okay? And I'm not just fluffing it up. They are very much in the know. And a lot of them do see through this kind of charade that the Biden administration and the government is playing altogether. It has provoked some very funny but insane reactions. Like, for example, Lindsey Graham basically forcing one of the generals to say, I need you to say that it was definitely reasonable for us to bomb Hiroshima, and that Israel should have the right to do what it needs to do in order to wipe out Hamas. And if that means nuking them, then so be it. What is going on, right? That you have a senator who's openly saying Israel should just have a nuclear bomb go off in Gaza. These people are insane, absolutely crazy. And, just this one little stunt, of Biden withholding the weapons has provoked such an insane Christian Zionist reaction, and I just want to say this. I think the only people crazier than jihadists are Christian Zionists. They are more radical than any jihadist, okay, you want to point to, because to say we should a nuclear bomb Gaza makes you a terrorist. You're the terrorist, okay? The terrorist you claim you're hunting, it's you. You are the terrorist.
I would probably say that the Likud settler coalition in the Knesset probably rivals those Christian Zionists in their extremism, but very good point. But what is this we're looking at here? So basically they're saying if Israel doesn't get everything it wants, then, there'll be repercussions. If you think about this in the context, Jose, of how much money IPAC and these various Israeli lobby organizations funnel into the pockets of campaign coffers for congressmen and senators right across the board in the U.S., doesn't that equate, extortion if you look at it from that perspective? Because it's almost like they're being paid to push policies that are going to benefit a foreign country who's spending hundreds of millions to lobby them to get those policies. I mean, isn't this the foreign interference that they claim that Russia was doing all these years?
Oh, absolutely it is. I mean, look, Thomas Massey, who's a congressman out in Kentucky, I believe, he's come out saying that IPAC should register as a foreign agent. And their response to that was to put out millions of dollars in TV ads against Massey, okay, so that people don't vote for him in the upcoming Republican primary, which I believe is tomorrow or today. I can't remember. I think it's tomorrow. I think it's slightly more disgusting than just, pushing policy for a foreign nation. I think it's you look at Ritchie Torres, right? Ritchie Torres was Israeli lobby day one. I mean, you look at the finances he was taking when he first ran for Congress, it was all Israeli Wall Street money. And what that is, and what politicians like Ritchie Torres, who are just completely unashamedly bankrolled by organizations like IPAC, it's this disgusting metaphor come to life, okay? That, people think they can just buy congressional districts, right? That they can just, we can just buy a politician. We'll buy a seat here. We'll buy a seat there, right? And the Bronx, Torres Congressional District, we can do that too. And, you look at some of these leaders who have like the most pull in Congress. Like you look at Nancy Pelosi, she's San Francisco, right? Like San Francisco, like New York City, is a tale of two cities. There's the super rich part, and then there's like the very poor homeless part. You want to talk about encampments, the homeless have had encampments in San Francisco for years now. Look at Hakeem Jeffries' district in Brooklyn, right? So he has same thing. He is part of East New York, which is also kind of a pretty poor area in Brooklyn, as well as some very rich parts, right? What is it about these, poor areas that they put some of these hardcore Democrats in? Well, it's because they think they can control them, and they think they can buy the votes, and they even think they might even be able to manipulate the votes, and no one's going to care. That's what it is, right? So Ritchie Torres and these other politicians are the embodiment of this belief that enough money can buy you any position you want.
No, well put. And I think it looks like you're making an effort to address that issue sincerely, which I think is definitely a breath of fresh air. We need more people, especially pursuing public office, that are willing to take an unpopular stance like that. I would think maybe a good campaign. Jose, what would you do if IPAC knocked on your door and they had a big fat check for you? They're saying, we don't like this Torres guy anymore. We want to turn this around for you, Jose. You need a little help. How's 1.5 million sound? You can do quite a lot of canvassing with that. But we need you to kind of see our way on some of these issues. Would you take the money and then donate it to a Palestinian charity straight away, and encourage other congressmen and senators to do that? Or would you just tell them to say, no, thank you. I really don't need the money. I'm, making my own sort of decisions on these issues, and I'm following what my constituents want. Or C, take the money and then bury Ritchie Torres. And then, well, they kind of own you, don't they, at that point, even if you win? What do you think?
Well, I was going to say they could shove it up their ass, but I think maybe taking it and
That's
giving it
option 4. Okay.
yeah, but maybe taking it and giving it to a Palestinian charity would be nice. I don't know if they would want the money, because if I told them where it came from, they might not even want it. I'll tell you this, there is a community center nearby, run by people, and I'm not going to say publicly who they are, because this story could get them in trouble. But there's a community center nearby of people who are very friendly and very and also very aware with what's going on in the community. And Ritchie Torres' office approached them and said, "Hey, we'd like to host an award ceremony here. Can you be the person to give the award to Ritchie Torres?" And they said no, because we don't endorse his policy on Gaza or Israel. This was only about a month and a half ago. And this scumbag really said to them, well, what if Ritchie Torres found a way to give you the money you're trying to raise for the cause that you're raising money for, which is something like a couple $100,000. And, the guy said he can go shove it up his ass. I'd rather hang myself than take $1 from Ritchie Torres. Like, this is somebody in the district, in the community, right? So, this is real principle. This is real conviction. That to me is like what I would do, if somebody decided to come and offer me some money to be bought and controlled, and say, yeah, no, you can keep your whole radical thing. Just when you're asked about X position or Y position, just say this instead. No, see, I can't be bought. And I first of all, I know that, and it's like a very strange thing. How do you know you can't be bought? How do you know? When I first started this campaign and I got all the donations rolling in from people and they were sending in their heartfelt messages, I felt like a responsibility to them. And it transformed me in such a way that I was like, wow, a lot of people really are relying on me to stay honest, to stay above the system. But secondly, I'm not running in a party. Both parties are known for corrupting people, even if they have good intentions. And I am not in either party. Meaning, should I actually win, there's nobody to whip me. There's nobody to tell me vote this way or that way. And I'm truly independent. My plan is to host a town hall weekly, with my constituency, the very least monthly, and if it means we have to go all day and I have to have a microphones set up from 10 in the morning until 10 at night, because I have to hear what everyone has to say, then so be it. I mean, I think that's reasonable and that's realistic. And I think that's something that can be done, and so no, I would not take $1 from IPAC or any special interest or corporate lobbyist who wants to try and influence my decision on any vote. No, I'd like to think I would rather take my input from my constituency and have a dialogue with them.
So it sounds to me like, people in your constituency and others, that they are taking this issue very seriously, this issue of especially what's happening in Gaza, reevaluating the U.S. relationship with Israel, especially because what's happened over the last 7 months. So this is kind of moving the dial on the Democratic side of the aisle in a way that a lot of people thought was not possible before. But it is netting results. People are changing their attitudes. They are questioning what their party, the Democrat Party, is actually doing in their name. This has never happened before. Your sort of general thoughts, final thoughts on 2024 elections, how this issue is going to move the dial, or is already making headway and affecting change. Sometimes
the truth is just too ugly to hide. People could get away with saying, I don't really know what's going on with the Ukraine, Russia. It's a war between these two countries. And Russia, Putin's a big bad guy, and the Ukrainians have all this money from us so they can put up a fight. So people could kind of hide behind their ignorance and say, well, I don't really get it. And it seems like there's fighting on both sides. But here in Gaza, Israel, it's very clearly who the oppressor is and who the bully is and who's not fighting back. Okay, because when the death toll comes around, the 35,000 innocent people dead in Gaza, and Israel is the one doing the oppressing, and there haven't been any more non-combatant Israeli deaths since October 7th, you're trying to say to yourself, like, hey, even if you're just some common person, and I saw this kind of happen, unfold live. I had the chance to work at a coffee shop, and I quit a couple months ago to focus on the campaign full time. Working at the coffee shop, I remember when October 7th happened, and I saw people coming in and were like, wow, can you hear what happened? Like, yeah, like Israel has to respond. This is crazy. They killed 1,000 people. They had all these allegations of sexual abuse and stuff. And as the weeks were progressing, people were like, the Israelis are kind of really, really hammering away. And then, you get to the point where it's been months and they're like, man, those people of Gaza are just dying every day. It's like, yeah, of course, you can't hide what you're doing. Everyone, the world sees what you're doing. And so the way this is going to affect the 2024 election, honestly, I don't know, because people are so fed up with both the Democrats and Republicans. I think people are going to vote. I don't know. I don't know, because it's like, what option do people have? People are so fed up with this whole Israel Gaza. They want the killing to stop. Who do you vote for when it comes to that? I know it's obvious. My campaign, right? You vote for me, that's a vote to stop genocide, because I'm very much pro ceasefire and the genocide question. There's no doubt with me. I am not pro-Israel in the slightest. So do not come at me with that. And like Ritchie Torres. But when it comes to national, or even where people are, and they're stuck between this Democrat-Republican thing, I think the way it's going to affect the election is people are going to have to choose right now. What are you going to do to stop this before the election happens? And so, honestly, Patrick, I'd like to think that Biden will not see the presidency again. I'm like almost 95% sure he won't. But the question is, are people going to vote for Trump out of anger? Or will people just not vote at all? And because Trump's supporters are super enthusiastic to vote for Trump, whereas Biden supporters only do it because they're like, God, I guess vote blue no matter who. Trump wins in that scenario altogether. And Kennedy is just, well, I wanted to, and then he's just as bad on Israel and as Biden and Trump are. And he's like owned by like the Adelsons, and it's, there's all this weird money there. So look, I personally think Trump is going to win by a landslide, not because people are, yeah, he has an enthusiastic base, but because people aren't going to vote for Biden. And that doesn't necessarily.
They're punishing. So they're prepared to punish Biden for what he's done. But that still sends a strong message, doesn't it? That if you betray your principles that your party held historically, for short-term support from lobbies and special interests, then you're going to pay the price at the ballot box. And so they only have to blame themselves. But who are they going to blame? The Russians if Trump wins? I don't know how they're going to spin this.
Well, I'll say this. This is going to go crazy. AOC, instead of endorsing Biden, should have just ran for president. Because frankly, not that I would support her as president, but if she genuinely believes that there is no good presidential candidate, she should just run herself and say, you know what? I don't support any candidate and I only trust myself. I would respect the hell out of that. And that's what I would do if I was 35 years old. If I was 35 years old, I would declare my candidacy for president, because I'd be like, I don't trust anybody to represent me but me. And that is why I'm running for Congress. I just hit the age limit where you can run for Congress and rent the car. That's why I'm running.
Right. So he's renting the car. He's running for Congress. You got my vote so far. I like what I hear. Jose Vega running for U.S. Congress, New York District 15, the Bronx, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate you coming on TNT this week. Good luck with the campaign, and follow Jose Vega, folks, on social media. Thanks, Jose.
Thank you.
There he goes, ladies and gentlemen. Follow him on social media. You guys in the chat room, get that link and share it. See what he's doing. Look, we're going to break right now. Top of the hour news headlines coming up, and Tony Gosling is going to join us on the other side for a Bilderberg 2024 preview. Tony's got the inside lane on Bilderberg. We'll hear what he has to say about that and the Iranian tragedy and much, much more. Stay with us, folks.